I used to believe that love could survive anything. That when two people promise forever, they meant it. But forever, I learned, has an expiration date. The day I caught my husband lying to me with a smile on his face. His name is Daniel. We met in college, two lost souls pretending we had everything figured out. He was charming, the kind of guy who could make anyone laugh, the kind who opened doors, remembered your coffee order, and made you feel like you were the only woman in the room. I fell for him fast. Too fast. We married young at 26. I thought we were the kind of couple people envied. The ones who still held hands in public after 5 years. We had a nice little house, a dog named Milo, and Sunday breakfasts with pancakes and cheap champagne. I thought that was happiness, but happiness has a way of blinding you like staring at the sun too long. You don't notice the burn until it's too late. It started small. He began working late. Meetings that didn't exist. Business trips that popped up out of nowhere. I noticed new shirts I hadn't bought, and new cologne he didn't tell me about. When I asked, he'd just laugh. You're imagining things, baby. You know how busy Quarter gets. And I wanted to believe him. I really did. But then came the silence, that strange, suffocating kind of silence that fills the space between the people who used to talk for hours. He'd sit on the couch scrolling through his phone, smiling at something I couldn't see. If I asked what was so funny, he'd say, just a meme. Except, memes don't make you blush. I tried to fix things, cooked his favorite meals, wore the perfume he liked, asked about his day even when I was tired. But nothing worked. The distance grew like a shadow, long and cold. Then came the night that changed everything. He said he had to stay late again. But when I called his office, no one answered. So I waited. Midnight, 1 2, at 2:34. I got a text from him, sorry babe. Crashed at Mike's, early meeting tomorrow. Except Mike was my cousin. And Mike had been at my parents' house that evening playing cards with my dad. That's when something inside me snapped. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt nothing. Like a switch flipped. And I became someone else, colder, quieter, smarter. If he was lying, I was going to find out. The next morning, I told him I had a work seminar out of town. I kissed him goodbye like everything was normal. Then I drove straight to his office. Parked across the street. Waited. At 6:15 p.m., I saw him walk out with her. A woman I'd never seen before. Tall, red hair, a laugh that echoed even through my car window. She touched his arm the way I used to. He leaned in, said something that made her smile. Then he kissed her. Right there on the sidewalk, under the streetlight. Like I never existed. For a long moment, I just stared. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. I took pictures not because I needed proof for anyone else, but because I needed to see it. To make it real. He didn't just cheat. He replaced me. That night, I didn't confront him. I smiled when he came home. I asked about his meeting. I even made him dinner. He kissed me goodnight and said he loved me. And I said it back. But inside, I whispered something else. I'm going to destroy you, Daniel. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't kill you instantly. It lets you bleed slowly. It teaches you how to lie, how to wait, how to become the monster they created. And as I watched him fall asleep beside me, snoring softly, smelling of her perfume instead of mine, I started planning. Not a confrontation. Not a divorce. Something far, far worse. He thought he broke my heart. He had no idea I was already building the fire that would burn everything he loved to ashes. After that night, everything changed, but not in the way most people expect. I didn't confront him. I didn't pack my bags or throw his clothes out the window. I became the perfect wife. Every morning, I kissed him goodbye. Every evening, I welcomed him home with dinner on the table. I smiled, laughed, touched his arm, asked about his day. I was calm. Too calm. He never suspected a thing. People think revenge is about rage, screaming, breaking things, burning bridges. It's not. Revenge is patience. It's strategy. It's silence. The first step was information. If I wanted to destroy him, I needed to know everything. He was careless. Most cheaters are. His phone wasn't password locked because he thought I trusted him. And I did. Once. Now, I watched. I learned her name, Chloe Barrett. She worked in marketing at his firm, recently divorced, mid-30s. Pretty in that polished, Instagram perfect way, filtered smiles, motivational quotes, and wine glasses in every photo. They met on a project last fall. I found the emails long threads that started professional and slowly turned intimate. Can't stop thinking about last night. I miss your voice. And then, my favorite, she doesn't make me feel alive the way you do. I read that one 3 times, just to make sure I'd never forget it. The hypocrisy of it all made me laugh bitter, sharp, hysterical laughter that scared even me. He wanted excitement. I'd give him excitement. I started small. Deleted a few important work emails from his account ones he needed for a big client presentation. Moved his calendar meetings to the wrong times. Accidentally threw out his favorite tie before a meeting. Little things, inconveniences. He'd never trace them back to me. When he began getting frustrated, I'd comfort him. Stroke his hair. Whisper, "You're just stressed, honey. You're working too hard." He believed me. He even started talking about Chloe less, thinking he was hiding it better. But I saw the texts, the hotel reservations, the lunch breaks that lasted 2 hours. I wasn't jealous anymore. I was fascinated. There's something intoxicating about knowing more than the person who betrayed you. You stop being their victim. You become their puppet master. Step 2 was the setup. I created a fake email, the burner account with no name, no trace. I started sending anonymous messages to Chloe. Subtle at first. "You don't know everything about Daniel. Be careful who you trust." She ignored the first few. Then one night, I sent her a photo, the one of them kissing outside his office. No text, no explanation. The next day, Daniel came home furious. He accused me of following him, of hiring someone to spy on him. I looked at him with wide, hurt eyes. "What are you talking about? Why would I do that?" He apologized an hour later, said he was just paranoid. I forgave him. That was step 3, control. I made him doubt himself, doubt her. They started fighting. I saw the messages. "Why are you acting weird?" "I told you, my wife doesn't know." "Then who's sending me these pictures?" "Daniel." Their little fantasy world began to crumble, brick by brick. And I was the earthquake beneath it. But I wasn't done. Oh no, not yet. I wanted to watch him lose everything, the job, the house, the woman. The perfect mask had to stay on until the very end. So I doubled down. I became softer, sweeter, more devoted. I left love notes in his lunchbox. Texted him during the day, "Miss you already." He started feeling guilty. You could see it in his eyes. The way he hesitated before leaving for meetings. The way he touched my cheek like he was checking if I still loved him. And I did, in a way. But my love had teeth now. I found Chloe's social media. She was posting less cryptic captions about trust and heartbreak. Good. I started following her from a fake account. Commented supportive things like, "Men can be so cruel sometimes, and you deserve better." And she responded. Every time. Within a week, she was messaging me privately, venting about Daniel. I listened. I was kind. I even told her that some men never change. She had no idea who I really was. By the time she found out, it would already be too late. Because while Daniel was lying to both of us, I was building something else, a perfect story. A collection of photos, emails, texts, financial records, and call logs. Proof, evidence, enough to ruin him completely. I wasn't sure when I'd use it, not yet. But soon, very soon. Sometimes I'd lie awake at night, watching him sleep beside me, wondering if he had any idea how close he was to losing everything. The irony made me smile. He once told me I was too soft, too forgiving. He had no idea how wrong he was, because forgiveness was never part of my plan. Only destruction. And the best part, he would never see it coming. There's a particular sweetness to watching a carefully built lie implode in public. It's not immediate. Revenge like this is a slow burn that becomes spectacular only when the flames are fed with oxygen of friends, colleagues, strangers with screens. I learned how to feed it. I began by rearranging the pieces so that when they fell, they would crush him from every angle. It wasn't enough to make him feel small in our bedroom. I wanted him humiliated under fluorescent lights in conference rooms, on feeds where his clients scrolled past his smiling headshot and saw the man they trusted reduced to scandal. First, I targeted his office. Daniel worked at a mid-size marketing firm that prided itself on image, glossy pitches, tasteful logos, and titled men who thought charm could replace competence. He liked being one of them. I used that. I'd already deleted key mails and messed with his calendar. Now it was time to let the evidence breathe where it would be hardest for him to explain it away. I sent an anonymous package, hand-delivered, no trace, to his boss. Inside, printouts. Photographs of him and Chloe from dates she'd posted then deleted, screenshots of flirtatious messages, and a timeline built from the receipts I'd quietly photographed from restaurants and hotels. Every slug of proof was labeled in a way that made sense even to a busy executive. Dates, times, client meetings missed. The final page was a single line in bold: conflict of interest, unprofessional conduct, potential liability. I watched his boss open that envelope in the lobby from across the street, pretending to tie my shoe. The man's face went from distracted to fascinated to furious within the span of a cigarette. 2 hours later, Daniel was being pulled into a meeting he hadn't scheduled. He came home that night pale, shaking like he'd swallowed ice. "You're paranoid," I said, spooning soup into his bowl. "Maybe it's corporate politics. Maybe someone's trying to sabotage him." He looked terrified, not for our marriage, but for his reputation. That fear tasted like victory. But office ruin alone felt tidy. I wanted spectacle, the kind of humiliation that echoes on feeds for weeks. So I set the internet to work. I created a blog, anonymous, professional looking, and populated it with everything I'd compiled: timelines, screenshots, receipts, and my photographs. I wrote in a clear, neutral voice, the kind that seems credible because it's not dripping with rage. Facts, dates, sources. Then I packaged it with a headline designed to be clicked and shared: top account manager at Halcyon Marketing exposed an affair of clients at risk. Clicks came quickly. A few industry forums picked it up. An industry newsletter forwarded it to a client list. By evening, a smattering of comments began to appear: shocked, accusatory, outraged. Someone posted a link on Daniel's LinkedIn. Someone else shared it on Reddit's local sub. The post spread like a stain. He begged me to delete it. He scrolled, breathless, as if the thing were a living entity, and I watched him fall apart while pretending to braid his hair the way he liked. When he asked who'd done this, I kept my eyes on him and said, "I don't know. Maybe someone from work. Maybe Chloe's ex. Maybe a stranger." I said it like it was an offer of comfort. My voice was velvet with poison. Next, I went for Chloe. She was collateral in his cowardice but a mirror of all his lies, so taking her apart publicly felt righteous. I didn't want to hurt her for the sake of cruelty. I wanted to use her as the proof of his betrayal and the symbol of his moral collapse. I reached out to her through the fake account I'd been using, gently coaxing more details out of her: where they'd met for dinner, a particular hotel chain she liked, a business trip she justified as client work. Armed with those specifics, I arranged a quiet confrontation that would become the kind of theater people love to watch. I called the hotel where she'd said she'd be staying under a false name and accidentally leaked to a front desk worker that there was a scandal brewing involving her and a married coworker. Human curiosity is an accelerant. Within hours, the front desk clerk had asked to see the booking name. Within a day, the hotel clerk had unthinkingly slipped a comment into a review thread, and that review thread became searchable. People love to believe they are witnessing a downfall, and search engines are efficient accomplices. Chloe's social feeds unraveled. Photos were archived, and then screenshotted and reposted. Her friends began to message her, then public comments came, then speculation. She deleted things frantically, then locked down accounts, then posted a single, shaky apology that read like a script. The comments trashed her. The same people who'd liked her photos now liked threads that mocked her. It was a playground of cruelty, and I walked through it barefoot, feeling every splinter as if it were mine. Daniel blamed Chloe with the reckless malice of a man trying to sever the rope that bound him to responsibility. "She made me do it," he told anyone who would listen, voice small and brittle. But the damage had already been seeded into his clients' minds: unreliable, distracted, morally compromised. A client I'd friended under another account sent a terse message to Daniel's boss, asking for reassurances. 2 large accounts paused negotiations. Money slowed, deals evaporated like mist. I wasn't satisfied with only professional collapse. I wanted to show him what it felt like to have the world open its mouth and spit him out. So I called his mother. Mothers are the slow-acting acid of reputation. They do not need proof. They require instinct and confirmation. I gave her both. I called from a number that looked local and spoke in the voice I remembered from the nights when Daniel was 10 and had scraped his knee, coaxing, careful, heavy with Fox concern. I told her something simple and true: I think Daniel is in trouble. I described the kind of details a mother's gut would latch onto: him looking distracted, missing family dinners, a scent of wine. I didn't mention Chloe at first. I let her worry bloom in her mind. She called him. The call was short. The minutes felt like years. The next afternoon, a Facebook post appeared on his mother's timeline: nostalgic photos of Daniel at college. All the comments loving and small, and one line that felt like a verdict: if anyone is hurting my son, I will not stand for it. My message to her had been a fuse I'd lit. It didn't explode into words of condemnation. It instead made people look closer. Friends messaged him with thinly veiled threats. His sister texted that she was disappointed. The circle contracted, narrowed, allowed no sanctuary. At home, he became frantic. He tried to delete accounts, called IT, begged HR to fix it. He paced. He vomited apologies into my lap that tasted like desperation. I can fix this, he said, grasping at the air like a drowning man. I'll make it right. I'll tell them it was a mistake. I let him swallow his own lies. The final move that week was surgical and small. I transferred a modest sum from a joint account into a new savings account I'd secretly opened for months. Not enough to ruin him financially overnight, but enough to freeze him when his credit card was declined and his boss began to question his expense reports. I shifted a mortgage memo to a scheduled date that would trigger a late notice. Paper trails are cruel in their bureaucracy. A late payment is a scab that invites infection. The cumulative effect was what I wanted: a slow, steady cascade that made his life into an ordeal. He lost a client. He was put on probation. He was mocked on forums. He discovered Chloe's posts about him in the open, not private messages. Friends stopped inviting him out. Clients found new teams. The man who once thought himself clever and untouchable slept fitfully, always half awake, listening for footsteps or calls or the knock that would end him. One night, he sat on the edge of the bed and looked at me like I was a stranger who had stolen his life and returned him a decoy. Why? He asked. Not why did I do it, but why did I have to hurt him so thoroughly? He expected pleading, bargaining. He wanted me to crumble so he could feel mercy. Instead, I told him the truth. Because you forgot I mattered, I said. Because you let someone else into our house and into our bed. Because you thought I'd be quiet. Because you deserve to watch what it feels like to be dismantled into pieces and leave the dust to the people you once called friends. He wanted to argue. He wanted to say he loved me, that it hadn't been about me. He wanted to rewrite the hours. But words were empty now. Actions were the currency. And I had paid enough. The final scene of that week was not violent. It wasn't cinematic in the way people in movies imagine revenge: no shattering glass, no blood. It was bureaucratic and cold: an email from HR, gentle in tone, severe in consequence. They were opening an investigation into professional conduct and conflict of interest. Pending results, he was suspended with pay. The word suspended felt like a noose. He looked at the screen and then at me, throat working. I could see the man I loved or had loved folding into something smaller, edges scorched by the heat I had fed him. From the outside, it might have looked like justice. From the inside, it felt like the precise retribution I'd promised myself on the night I first saw them kiss. But as he sat there, pleading with his hands, I felt a familiar speck of unease. Revenge was intoxicating, but also a mirror. Every public humiliation I arranged was a reflection back at me, revealing the lengths I could go, the coldness I'd cultivated. I had engineered his ruin, and in doing so I had built a new self, one that could do monstrous things and sleep. I lay in the dark that night, listening to the house exhale. Milo snored under the bed, oblivious to human collapse. Outside, somewhere down the street, neighbors laughed over barbecues. The world moved on while ours unraveled like cheap thread. There was a satisfaction, yes, a bright, searing joy at each message that confirmed his fall. But there was also a hunger that didn't ease. I had wanted him to feel small. He did. But I wanted him to feel the full measure of what he'd broken, to be stripped of every comfortable thing he'd built around his deceit. And so I planned the next level. Public humiliation had been the first act. There were deeper cuts left. Personal betrayals turned legal. Financial ruin widened. People he loved pitted against him. I'd taken his career. Soon, I intended to take everything else. The game had changed, but the rules were clear: no mercy, no retreat. When I slid under the covers and faced the ceiling, the last thing I felt before sleep, not peace, not triumph, was a pulse of cold anticipation. This was far from over. The thing about revenge is that it doesn't stay neat. It spills, it corrodes. It finds the soft place under your ribs and eats from the inside out. By the time I started the fourth chapter of his ruin, I no longer recognized the silhouette of the woman who had decided she could get him to bleed. The outline was familiar, same laugh, same hands, but the shadows were wrong. They were sharp and patient, the product of someone who had learned to be precise. He was suspended. Clients were gone. Chloe had retreated into a private life of apology posts and locked profiles, her face a study in what humiliation does to a person who thought herself untouchable. But public disgrace is a flash. It lights up the night then goes dark. I wanted permanent damage, the kind that bites into credit scores, court records, family trust. I wanted consequences that carried the word forever. So I made it legal. I had files now, more than gossip, more than screenshots. I had patterns. He had expense reports with convenient hotel stays and client dinners that matched the dates he was with her. He had shifts of call logs where his midnight texts coincided with client calls. I sat with those documents the way a sculptor studies marble, seeing where to tap, where to shave, what form could be revealed. First, I planted doubt inside his family. I started with his sister, Hannah, the one who used to call me on my birthday and send photos of childhood Christmases. She was the kind of person who believed in fairness and clean lines. I wrote her an email from what looked like a concerned friend, concise, factual, with a few attached screenshots from that blog I'd created. No accusations, just evidence. The note asked a simple question: have you noticed Daniel acting differently? Hannah wrote back with confusion, and then with concern. The between-the-lines messages to his mother began to take the shape I wanted. Mothers and siblings do not like surprises. They reach for explanations and then for loyalty. They called him. They asked for answers. He lied the same small, cowardly lies, and each one was a splinter. Family trust, once strained, snapped suddenly. His mother visited. She sat in our kitchen and looked at me with a face I had loved and then buried. "Are you okay?" she asked, voice uncertain, as if asking whether the sky was meant to be that color. I had to decide, right then, how honest to be. I could have told her everything and let her be the instrument of his social death. Instead, I watched her eyes cloud with worry and then with the kind of disappointment that doesn't need words. She left, telling him to come by more often, to call his father, to fix things. None of it mattered. What mattered was that the family net had been shaken. Once that happens, people fall where they stand. Next, I hired a lawyer. Not a thug with a lights on neon sign, but a woman with a soft voice and a head full of legalese. She asked the right questions: timelines, witnesses, documents. I fed her a diet of truth and carefully placed lies enough to make a case appear airtight from the outside. We drafted letters, demand letters for the company, pre-litigation notices hinting at conflict of interest and breach of fiduciary duty. We prepared a sexual harassment complaint framed by Chloe's account, the statement I helped compose during the weeks she thought I was her friend. It read like a woman who had been betrayed but was brave enough to speak. I tucked a note to the lawyer about anonymity and protection for witnesses. The law, I learned, had teeth. So did a paper trail. When the first envelope arrived at his boss's desk, formal, stamped, frightening in its polite tone, the tremor in his voice made him confess the kind of truths men only tell when the floor gives way. He told his boss about late nights, about being caught up in the moment, about feeling alive again. The man across from him listened and then told him the word they both feared: investigation. He was suspended without pay this time. The word hit harder because it meant the family saw the hole where the paycheck had been and felt everything that rained down from it: late fees, mortgage notices, awkward questions about a joint credit card payment. I had arranged those small financial stings earlier, but now they were a chorus. Late payments sang. HR called asking for documentation he didn't have. The line between private sin and public consequence blurred into a smear. He began to attack in the only way he knew, deflection. He accused me of orchestrating everything, of planting stories, of being jealous and vengeful. He told people I had lost my mind. He wrote emails to mutual friends in the early morning when his judgment was wry and his hands were shaking. I let him. People love a fallen man. They also love a better story, betrayal on both sides. I played the long game, let him gaslight in the short term. The facts would outlast his flailing words, but legal moves are only as good as the people who make them. Chloe, once fragile and fearful, hardened into someone I could use without guilt. I'd built her small triumphant narrative, go to HR, tell them everything. She did. The complaint landed with HR at the firm, and HR responded with a delicate, corporate gravity I'd learned to respect. The company needed to be seen as clean. The investigation became public enough to be a line on a resume and a rumor in a lobby. Meanwhile, the lawyer sent the first demand letter to Dangle personally, a notice to preserve evidence, a suggestion of claims to come, and a polite request to resolve the matter quietly for fear of reputational harm. The letter's posture said, "We can make this formal. We can make it loud." He signed nothing. He tried to counter with words, with apologies, with promises to go to counseling. He took me to a therapist once, where he held my hand and mouthed the same lines he had used for months. I agreed to go because I wanted him to see me as soft and sincere. It was a play on my part, rehearsed and embraced. The fractures widened. Friends I had assumed would stand with him began to pause when messages came to their inboxes, screenshots, copies of timelines, the blog post echoing across platforms. Men who once bought him drinks at bars now asked cautiously about his side of the story before offering condolences. The world rearranged itself around the shockwave. It was subtle and brutal. And then came the day he realized the damage wasn't abstract. The mortgage company called. A late fee notice. Notices of pending audits. His boss scheduled a remote meeting with senior counsel. A client he'd wooed for months told him they were reallocating the account. He sat on the floor of our bedroom and wept. Not with theatrical fury, but with a small, quiet grief that sounded like the clack of a machine shutting down. It was at that moment I felt the cost not only to him but to myself. The sweet blood of satisfaction soured. There was an ache under my sternum I hadn't anticipated, a cumulative fatigue of deceit and planning. A dull horror at the scale of what I'd pulled into motion. "Please," he said that night. Voice raw, the kind of plea that used to make me soften instantly. "Please tell me what you want. I'll do anything." There was 1,000 ways I could answer: money, confession, a show of begging. But none of them were what I wanted. What I wanted was to make him feel empty in the exact same way I had felt the night I watched them kiss. I wanted the hunger he'd left me with to be his. To watch him stare into a life that had been built on script and charm and find only an echo. Instead, I told him something simpler and sharper. "You stole my life," I said. "You took our years and treated them like a waiting room. You thought there was an expiration date on my devotion. There isn't. There's only the cost now." He looked at me like he could bargain with the sentence. "What cost?" "The cost is everything you love," I said. "You'll have to earn it back. If you can." He tried to argue. He promised reparations. He spoke of therapy, of restitution, of how counseling would save whatever remained. I watched the words pour over me like rain that could never reach my roots. They didn't touch me. Because the truth no lawyer could draft or therapist could stitch back together is this: some fissures are structural. When the foundation is undermined by lies, the house might stand, but the floor creaks with every step. The thing I had done, legal, social, financial, had shifted the ground beneath him. He was awake now, calibrating his plea like a man who believes salvation is currency. By the time I left the bedroom that night, his sobs were small and periodic. Outside, life sounded ordinary: the neighbor's music, the hum of tires on wet asphalt. I poured myself a drink at the kitchen counter and examined my hands. They were steady, not because I was untroubled, but because I had become a woman who could do what needed doing. There was one move left that would make the fracture absolute, is something that would force him to choose between saving his name and saving the person he'd betrayed. It would pull his family into the courtroom, make his mother decide whether to stand with the son or with the evidence. It would involve people I had kept at arm's length until now, and the risk of collateral damage was high. I walked to the window and watched the streetlight smear itself wet on the pavement. The plan formed like a shadow that knew the contours of the house. It was precise and terrible. It required courage and cruelty in equal measure, and when I finally set it into motion, there would be no turning back.